Hey, my name is Eric. I'm a software engineer. I've been doing this for 14 years. I've been working with Angular for the last 6 or 7 years. And today, um, I plan to spend some time live coding here, working on some. I've got this test helper. It's somewhere between a framework and a helper in one of my open source libraries that I love. It works. It's just really nice, and it organizes things and makes things a lot simpler when I'm testing something big. But when I'm just doing something small, I discovered last time I recorded one of these videos, um, I end up with more setup code. You know, uh, yeah. Here's an example of a test I was trying to write. I did write during the last stream, and it's like two-thirds setup code or worse. And so I sort of had enough and decided it's time to dig into this problem and try to make it better. Try to make simple tests simple to write. Um, and so I think to start off with here, I want to do I have some sort of goal in mind, but I want to really get it down and show you a real solid before and after, and have in front of myself a real solid before and after of what I'm trying to accomplish. So here's the before, and here I've just copied it and written after. And now, what do I think should be able to be just like implicit, taken away from this whole um, test setup to just focus on the actual test code itself? And I think, first of all, the wrapper component, I want to get rid of that entirely. And I think I should be able to. I don't want to have to make a new subclass where I declare these things. I want to be able to pass in test directive, and that's it. The wrapper component's going to become automatically. So I think we should be able to get rid of this. I hope. That's going to be the first area of real emphasis here. Because, well, there are some challenges there that I was playing with this in between since the last stream, and we'll see. We'll see if we can manage it. It's going to be a bit of experimentation and just like exploring and learning what's possible. Um, and this, I think, should be able to be. If it's not coming from the framework, I know we should at least be able to get this as a like a helper. So it should be something like get directive from CTX2 called get this directive. We should be able to make something like that. And now look at that's maybe we didn't get rid of two-thirds, but we've already gotten rid of almost half. And is there any more to go? I feel like the rest is probably actually necessary setup that's relevant, not boilerplate, but actually just relevant to setting up what's needed for this particular test. Um, oh, I wonder if we'll even need a selector. Maybe we could even get it down to this. Oh, except I do believe we're going to end up needing it to be a component, which means it'll need a template. So there's a little bit of boilerplate there. And then that is, if we have this in the constructor, we're going to have to call super, so we'll still need this. That's not boilerplate of the test, though. That's more boilerplate of this test directive, which is the well, it's not the thing we're actually testing. This came from a test for. Oh no, it is. This was a test for, yeah, directive superclass. So this is boilerplate for the thing I am testing, not for the test setup code. So that's not my fault, for what we're going to focus on tonight. This is the actual code under test. Certainly we'll need to keep that. Yeah, I think we could get it down. I'm hoping we can get it down to this. That's my goal. And I'm going to feel much better if we can. And so this would probably be something like get component test, and this would be like a component, something like that. And just for the sake of cleaning up this example, let's get rid of all the 2's. And that's to make it a fair comparison. We'll get rid of all the 2's here. And then I think I can pull this up for reference and see how close we're getting as we proceed. But yeah, look at that. All of this is just completely gone. And then this is simplified. That's basically what we accomplished, right? We changed directive to a component. We had to swap out selector for a template. Both of those are just sort of comes out as a wash. So yeah, very good. So let's see what we can do, shall we? As I said, I was working on this since the last stream, so I have to remember where I left off, and then we can start really experimenting and see what the Angular framework will allow us to abstract away from all that setup. And so what I'm working on now is making, so previously we were, oh yeah, here. So before we were using this component context, and this is the thing that I'm trying to simplify. And so I named this test where'd it go? Oh, sorry, this should be component context next. Import, sure, import into my Scratch file. So I'm sort of, it's going to have to be a breaking change. I'll have to deprecate this one in the library and write in the docs that people should transition over to this one, which is going to be nicer, but might require, a little bit of migration. But we're going to end up, what I did here was just copy and paste this into here, and I started working on this root component and trying to find a way to eliminate this wrapper component. And then I don't have to pass it in here. I don't need to declare it anywhere because I already found I can just, it infers the type. Well, it's not showing up in my tooltip there, probably because this is a Scratch file, but it infers the type instead of having to declare it. Like, it's already better. I've already got it. Oh yeah, let's do that. Let's see. So this is the goal. And where are we so far? We don't need this class. We can just call this and pass in, but we still have to make our own wrapper component. That's the part I'm trying to get rid of right now. So right now we have to do this. And yeah, this part here I haven't addressed at all yet. So that's still more like that. So I made a tiny bit of progress, but next up is to try and do this wrapper. So again, back in. So I made this root component that I'm hoping can just be this hidden wrapper. So first of all, we have to have a wrapper, and I researched this again to make sure things haven't changed. And sure enough, it's still the case that in Angular tests, if you want it to truly behave like a component in the wild inside of your test, that's going to include all of the lifecycle hooks of the component, right? Of course, because the whole point of, well, hidden behind the scenes here, we need on changes to be called. I suppose we don't actually need that here. And if you don't make a wrapper component, if you don't actually have in a template bindings to the component that you're testing, Angular is not going to call on changes. And so we need to, my next thought, this I have to sort of abandon. My next thought is to see if we can come up with a component where we can construct the template string on the fly based on the component we're trying to test. So we'll make our own wrapper and bind all the properties for it manually. And then if it goes through a template binding like that, Angular should pick it up and call ng on changes along with all of the other lifecycle hooks. So this is my crazy idea. I don't know how well it's going to work. I've done things a little bit like it before, but not exactly. And so we're going to find out. We're going to play around and see what it does. So like I said, this sort of failed. I looked into like doing this view container ref. This is like the official Angular documented way to do dynamic components. So this was my first idea for a wrapper where we pass in the component type. And this works in terms of like it actually does have a wrapper component that actually does render the inner component that you pass in here. That you pass in. Well, I have to go to this one. No, I have to go to this one that you pass in here. It'll make a wrapper that actually does render this inside of it, but it still doesn't call ng on changes, which was the whole point. And I played around with it, experimented, relearned how to do all this, and then it wasn't working, and I went and found the right docs and saw all the descriptions. Here's a cool feature request for Angular that to add a method to component ref, so that when you call component ref.change inputs, it will call all the right lifecycle hooks. And I gave it a thumbs up. I'll even give it a heart. Because once we can do this, in fact, I will leave a note. If they implement this, then we won't have to do the crazy idea I have right now if it's even going to work. And this would actually work for us. So I'm going to say something like, let's say something like, we could use a view container ref instead of, dynamically creating a template for each test if Angular adds this feature. So I'm going to leave that as a note for my future self in case this works, or I guess either way if it doesn't work, in case they ever implement this and I want to come back and simplify whatever crazy code we end up with. Okay, so it's time to sort of scratch what I have here and figure out how to make a dynamic component here in init based on this component type. So the first thing we're going to need to do, so my goal is, my vision is we're going to have a new component that looks something created dynamically that has a template. So it would be like a and the template is going to be figured out dynamically. It's going to have, whatever, some sort of wrapper around it. But then inside, we're going to do, app my component figured out dynamically based on the correct selector based on the component you passed in. And then have a whole list here of my input 1 equals my input 1, right? And have it dynamically try to figure out which inputs exist on the component you're trying to test. I don't know if I can do this. We have to figure it out. And construct a template on the fly that looks like this. Then pass that into the test setup code. Oh, I guess it's going to have to be here, so we can pass it into where as a declared module that we created dynamically on the fly. Sorry, a declared component. So this will be something like, create dynamic wrapper for component type. And so in here, create dynamic wrapper for a component type, which is a type of, I don't know, we'll think about that later. And have it, so we're going to have a component here that's going to have a class dynamic wrapper, and we'll add more to that, and then we'll return dynamic wrapper. Component. Okay, so if you have any ideas or you have an experience to help with this, please go ahead and leave some comments, and we can try and work on this together. Otherwise, man, I'm going to dive in. I think we've laid the groundwork here. And I've sketched out the idea, and it's time to try and make it a reality. So the two first things that are going to be showstoppers if we can't figure it out is, can we dynamically extract the selector in the list of inputs from a passed in class? So when we create our component and pass in this thing, can we do, so we're going to have a selector here. I guess that's going to be a new piece of sort of boilerplate. So that'll be like S change detecting would be the conventional name based on the name of the class. Can we figure this out, and can we get this my input? So I guess first step, Google. Angular get selector from component class. Oops, class. Good. Accessing selector from within Angular 2 component. Use element ref. Tag name. That's if the component is already in the DOM. Then you can get the tag name used on the host element. That's not going to help us. It's not in the DOM yet. Ooh, what's this? Reflect.get metadata annotations. Outdated. See this. Oh, okay. That's the one we just looked at above. You need to get the metadata associated with your component. Important note, annotations get stripped out when you run the AOT compiler, rendering this solution invalid if you are pre-compiling templates. And I want to say that Angular is now, they're using Ivy in their tests. Are they using AOT in just the generic scaffolded Angular CLI setup? I guess maybe we can just run this and see this dot constructor. I don't know what exactly, and see if it returns anything. Reflect.get metadata annotations. So first, let's just experiment, see if that actually does give us something. We'll keep digging in to see if there's any documentation to support this answer. Okay, so let's just do something like, we need to get the code into a running state first of all, so that we can then run it and experiment with some of this stuff. Create dynamic wrapper in here. Right. We don't want This was what? Root component. Yeah. I can always stash my changes if this doesn't work. Just to get to a running state where I can run a test, and just I'll put some code right here to try and dynamically through that reflect get a hold of, and I'm going to restart Karma because it has a bug sometimes when you have an error. If you've edited multiple files while there's an error in one of them, it gets all out of sync, which is really annoying. Okay, first of all, let's just see if this test even runs right now. And if it does, then we can use it as a playground to experiment from. So let's run this test. Whoops, let's run this test. Oh my gosh. I don't know what I did wrong with my keyboard shortcuts, but I'll right click and copy since I can't be trusted to copy paste right now apparently. Okay, it's just a failing expectation, so I think we're good. I think, like if I set a breakpoint here, we'll have a playground. Lovely. All right. So let's see what happens if we do something like, we should try this with a component that's dynamically created right here, but also try it with a component that exists in like some production code in case, should that be different? I don't think that should be different, but I'll try it anyway, just to make sure. First, we'll start here. Reflect dot get, and oh, we already have problems. What was that called? Oh, get metadata. Get reflect isn't even a thing. Oh, there. Okay. I don't know why autocomplete wasn't working for a second, but annotations of this dot constructor. Let's do change detecting component as a starting point. And what are you complaining about? Get metadata does not exist. Didn't I just have that in the autocomplete? Where does this reflect.get metadata come from? Yeah, that thing. They're saying all these times it's not working. Why don't I even have it? Oh, where did I see reflect.get metadata property? Let me just copy this exact error message and see if people are posting about that. Yeah. Adding import reflect metadata fixed the problem. Should be noted that VS Code gets confused. This should work. Do you include the library like below? So there's some library that this is coming from, and is that even referenced in this Stack Overflow answer? Uh-oh. As of Angular 2, this seems to be out of date? Oh no. What's this? Window reflect object. Okay, let's see if we have one of those. Window reflect. Oh, that is a thing. .get metadata. Okay, it's there. It's just not in TypeScript's default. What do you call that? Their lib.dts. So that's a thing. That's a thing. All right. Well, let's worry about the typing later. Let's just make it, force it to work for a minute because we're just experimenting right now. No sense trying to get all the typing set up if this isn't even going to work in the first place. I'm going to need to, what, like maybe console log this, and I can, or no, let's put it in a variable, metadata, and then log it. And then I can set a breakpoint and inspect this thing and see what we have. Set a breakpoint, I don't know, like there. Okay, metadata is undefined. Well, that didn't get us very far, did it? Do I have change detecting component dot constructor? Ooh, yes, I do. Okay, so let's do reflect dot get metadata annotations of that. Relfect? How about reflect? Still undefined. Okay, so maybe that's why this is out of date or something. What else can you tell us? How to use oh no. What else can you tell us from this one? Getting the component selector. How can I access the property selector from component decorator? Here we are again inside the component. And we've got this is the one we just looked at. I need a different search term maybe. Is it possible to get component class tag name, class name using selector name? No, that's using stuff when it's already in the DOM. How to get component selector name inside. This is again always like when you're already inside the code. This is almost, that's the same answer, but a different question that we were looking at before. Yeah. Ooh, factory. Oh, can we get something from the component resolve component factory? And if we can, would that even help us? That's interesting. Component factory resolver. Let's go see what is available in those docs. Component factory resolver gets us, I think, the factory, which is going to return us. What were they doing? Component factory. Resolve component factory, which gets us the actual factory, which is this thing. And then they called, oh, just a property directly on it. Selector inputs. Oh, that's exactly what we want. Inputs is an array of property name to template name. Oh yeah, that's it. Okay. Oh, that's exciting. Now, however, the question is, can we get a hold of this thing in time? And that I feel like might be a whole different question. Like, I was thinking I wanted to construct this thing here. But if I construct it here, that means that it has not yet compiled all the information. I don't think we have access to a component factory resolver yet, because you can't do that till after you've set up your test bed. So maybe we can set it all up. Oh, could we? Oh gosh, this is so close. First of all, let's go dig into the source code of this component factory and see if maybe it's using some other means that we can also use anytime we want. I'm not very optimistic, but I feel like that will be good due diligence. This is abstract. Where do I see where it actually... Okay, let me go to the component factory resolver. Again, abstract. Okay, fine. Let's pull one out. Let's just write some code here to continue being excited that gets all the information we want here when it's already too late, and then we'll use that to try and dig in further to see if we can get it sooner. Okay, you weren't very promising, but let's see. ctx.inject the component factory resolver dot resolve component factory for the change detecting component, and that's the factory. And then let's set a breakpoint there and see what this thing is and whether we can get all the information it looks like. Oops. Okay, factory dot selector. Oh, that's so cool. Factory dot inputs. Oh my gosh, look at this. This is amazing. That's exactly what I want. Okay, and this factory is what? It is a component factory $1. That doesn't help me search for things. Okay, let's go back to the Angular source code and just search for it here. Component factory resolver. In the code, in some TypeScript. Tests, no. Source code for renderer 3. Importing it. Examples. This is the abstract one. That's the one we just saw. Integration test. ng component, importing it. We want to find, here we go. So renderer 3 has one. That looks like what we want, I think. So resolve component factory does some stuff, gets the component def, and uses that to construct the factory. And get component def feels like it probably has most of the magic. Get, where is get component def coming from? Get component def, oh, it's imported, of course, from definition. From definition.ts. Get component def. Oh, it's just in some, oh gosh, it's just in some like map that they're storing probably directly in this file somewhere. So they've done all the work in some sort of pre-computing thing when they compiled the either your app or like the test environment. Okay. It's not looking good for being able to do that ourselves. Like sort of recreate what the component def does. We could keep tracking it down. Let's make sure. Let's go find where it actually does the work and verify that it's not something we have access to. So that means finding this type. That's like everywhere. Search TypeScript file for the word type. Where is it coming from? Import mutable and type from interface type? This does not seem right, does it? Am I on the wrong track? It called get component def to pass it to the component factory constructor. And this lowercase t type, oh, is right there. Oh my gosh. Open your eyes. Okay, good. So that was just passed in. Okay. So we imported this into this file, get component def. So it's the component. So it just, oh, the component def was already on the component. And it just had to index it from, I wonder if we have get component def available to us, or if that's a private API. Get component def is not a thing for us. But if we can find, okay, let's go back to that symbol they were using. Get component def, ng comp def is being imported from fields. I wonder if that's something we have access to. So that would be like change detecting component ng comp def, also not something we can import. And I have a feeling that's going to be a symbol, so if we can't import the symbol, we are out of luck. Let's go find fields. ng comp def get closure safe property. That thing. We are so deep into the internals of this, I have no hope that we can actually get access to it. Which, I'm not surprised, but I wanted to make sure. I'm willing to give up on this now and go think about, is there some way we can get the timing just right to get access to that factory and yet still be able to add a component, a dynamically created component to the test environment. I feel like we have to do some digging into test bed. I don't remember exactly. Well, okay, let's do some experiments before I tell you all the reasons I think it won't work, because I'm going to try it anyway. So for example, could we here do something like, oh, I can leave that. I don't have to get rid of that yet. This dot inject, basically all this. First of all, let's see if we can just do this. This dot inject that. Now the change detecting component is the component type. Oh, whoops, I copied it before I deleted that. And oh, this is the factory. And let's move our breakpoint to here. And I had an error, so I'm going to restart Karma. Move our breakpoint to here and see. Certainly this should be working so far, but then the question is, after this, can we add to the test bed a new component? That's my doubt. So we want to set a breakpoint in component context next, somewhere around here. Oops, ng on init. No, not there. Sorry. Here. We all are too late. Okay, try again. All right. Factory dot, what was it? Dot selector inputs. Okay, so yep, it works already in this constructor, but now that's perfect. That's great. Oh my gosh, remove the breakpoint. Can we do something like testbed dot, what did we call in the superclass here? We called configure testing module. And I'm so used to using my nice what I think are nice wrappers to all this testbed stuff. I'm rusty. Testbed dot. What do we have available? We could maybe try calling this. I doubt we could call that again. Oh, you know what? Okay, before we go too far, I am relatively confident that we cannot. That we cannot. I thought I could put things above super as long as, because of this dot inject. This dot inject, I think, is just like the same as testbed dot inject. A supercall must be the first statement in the constructor when a class contains initialized properties. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. You can put stuff above super sometimes, but not if maybe because that's a private. There we go. All right, well, let's do this a minute for experimentation's sake. I assume that's not going to work. I'm almost confident not to even try, but might as well try. Yeah, cannot configure. Oh, cannot configure. Oh, wait a minute. We got it. Yeah, okay. As soon as we call inject, that's like the point of no return. You're done configuring testbed. Now you're using it. And so this is the timing error. Okay, so I think we're going to have that same problem here if we call override like I was. Let me undo and so I get that private stuff back. I think we're going to have the same problem if I try to do override component here. Component type. Oh no, this is going to be whatever. Wrapper, some new dynamic thing. So let's just override, I don't know, whatever, root component with, I don't know, let's just see if this throws an error first of all. Oh, what do we pass in? Metadata override. Oh, we can't even, it's still add, remove, or set. Type used for modifications to metadata. Set to a partial of t. Okay, let's. There's no property in partial component. Oh, component. And what is this component? So we could override just the template. I'm okay with that. Oh no, and yeah, just the template. That's the only part I really need to be dynamic. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Let's see if we can override set the template to some new string, some new whatever, HTML. All right, that's fair. And then if this is, what does this actually create? This creates a change detecting component. So let's override to see if this is even working. Let's make it component type, and we'll override the template of our component. And so we'll see if this actually shows up in the test. Cannot override when test yeah, that's the chicken and the egg. In order to create our dynamic template, we need to have the factory. And in order to do the factory, we need to grab this from the injector. And once we grab this from the injector, we can no longer override the template. This is exactly the problem I was anticipating when going down the it's too bad this factory has exactly the information that we want. So, what's plan C? You know, okay, so that didn't work. This guy still feels like there's some hope. If we can just get a hold of those type annotations, we have to figure out how to get a hold of those Angular type annotations. Get Angular annotations. Are they called decorators or annotations? Maybe decorators. Oh, there's a difference between them? Reflect. This is from 4 years ago, 2015. Ooh, new Angular. This is from also 2015. Any newer ones? 2019. We were using the solution and found that AOT strips out annotations. Fortunately, if you're dealing with components, there's an alternative. And it's the one that we just saw doesn't work for us. Yeah, I feel like AOT we might not be using AOT for tests. Last I knew we didn't. So let's okay, let's just try this. Underscore annotations underscore. What could go wrong? It's not like we're using what's meant to be a private API or anything, right? Anyway, we'll experiment. We'll see. Maybe something will turn up in the process. Okay, so this unfortunately was a fail, which is really too bad. Now I have a new thought. I have to wait. Sorry. Ideas to maybe investigate later. Anyway, I don't want to go down the rabbit trail right now. Because we are in the middle of trying this. We're coming back to this, but it's it's slightly different. So this is going to be my module component underscore annotations. This was apparently an Angular 5. App component. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Let's copied this one. It sounds like it's actually... And instead of app component, it's going to be change detecting component. And we'll call this annotations and log annotations and just see if that works. Oh, errors in Karma again. Let's just refresh that in case it was in the wrong file. And oh, I need a breakpoint right in the test again. Oh, look, it printed something. Okay. Let's dig in. So annotations has a value, which is a decorator factory, which has a selector. Okay. And it's worked since Angular 5, so I feel like as long as Angular doesn't switch to using AOT in tests, this will keep being a viable option for us. It's not great, but I mean, so far it's the only option. Okay, so that gets me the selector. What about getting the inputs? And where does this even come from? I'm curious. What is this thing? Reflect annotations. Underscore annotations, please. And here we're getting Angular. Maybe the string comes straight from the Angular source code. Ah, yeah. Oh, maybe we can use that. Oh, look at this. Annotations, parameters, make decorator. What is this? Where are we? Core decorators. We export that. I assume that's not in the public API. No. No. Property metadata, maybe that's where we would end up finding whether it's an input. Oops, oh gosh. So I use a Mac for work, and I use a Windows machine, my personal laptop, and the keyboard shortcuts, command versus control key. What was I just looking for? Annotations. If the class has it, type decorator, make decorator, type decorator. If the class has these annotations, then grab them, otherwise define them as an empty array and then push on the annotation to it. Oh. But this was the only one, right? It was an array of length 1. Yes, it's a array of length 1. So that's not where it's stuffing the input. Make param decorator. Something similar. Okay, so it's called parameters. Maybe it's on the class. Let's see if it's on the class. Parameters is probably underscore underscore parameters. Oh, what do you know? So, oops, here, let's do reflect dot get own property descriptor from change detecting component parameters. No. So where does it stuff those? It says it's pushing it onto CLS. I feel like it's on the class itself, and so maybe we can actually just explore and find it. Change detecting component. Oh, how do we change detecting component dot? There's annotations. We have an element ID. Prop decorators? What's that? My input. Oh my gosh. Where's this coming from? Where are you coming from? Prop decorators. Render 3 metadata. Reflection capabilities? Ooh. Prop metadata? Private own prop metadata. Is there anything, is like reflect a thing? No. So we have something called prop decorators. I mean, we can just use the private API. The danger, of course, being that Angular 12 removes it. And then every time Angular, changes, that I have to come in and spend a bunch of time on this component context next, or and fix it. I suppose it's always going to be true that there will be some way to get at that those decorators that the user has put on their component, right? Because we're passing it the way we are passing it to testbed. Angular has to be able to navigate that and build the actual component metadata, whatever it needs to figure out to hook up all the inputs. It has to get that. It has to get the information from that class object we pass into that declarations array. And so there's always going to be some way to sneak in through there and do it the same way they do. That's not necessarily true. They could use a symbol that we don't have access to. But I'm on a roll. I want to do it. I just want to do it. So let's call this, what was it? Prop We called this prop decorators. Prop decorators. Oh, I suppose I can just test that here. Can I do that from here? Prop decorators. And what does it look like when we have two inputs? So we have our annotations. Right, annotations is and prop decorators. So this is probably going to give us inputs and like I don't know, view child. Anything like this. And I just want to see what that ends up looking like. I assume it's probably going to end up in this array. And we'll have to know how to, pick out the pieces that we need. Okay, so the value is a map from the property name on the component. I don't know why each one of these is an array. Oh, the property could have more than one decorator. It could be, I don't know, both a view child and an input. I don't know which ones you would actually mix and match, but in terms of the semantics of the language, you can put multiple decorators on a single property. Okay. Let's run with it, man. Let's just run with it. I think that's going to be enough. I think that's we finally have the secret sauce. Let's get busy. So let's make something like get selector for a component type. And let's do get inputs for a component type. And that'll be, I don't know what we're going to want that to be yet. Maybe just an array of strings, but maybe it's going to need to be more. And this one's going to use the annotations, and this one's going to use the decorators. And so here we're going to return annotations.value, and we could map over them until we find one that has a selector. Right, so this will be the component type. Dot value, which is, the typing. This isn't going to give me any nice typing information. Object is possibly undefined. Okay, so let's do assert annotations. That component does not, that I don't know, does not appear to be a component. And then annotations dot, oh look, it does have value, and here we have an any. So what is this thing? It's an array. Well, I could declare the typing, but I'm only going to use it in this one function. I feel like that's maybe overkill. So we're going to return, we're going to find the decorator that has a selector. Then we're going to grab the selector from it. Okay, and I'll leave a little to do, add more guards against poorly annotated component type. Okay, so let's start with that. Let's see if here, yeah, let's also start building up this guy. So for now, we're just going to return our root component we wrote before that's up above. Create dynamic wrapper for component type. And then let's just do something simple here like, oh, and this is going to return a type of something. Get selector for the component type. Let's see how we did. Of course, we had an error, so, well, I'll rerun it. It'll be fast to see if it worked or not. And look at that. That worked. Okay. Now, let's log get inputs of the component type. Lovely. So this is now property descriptor or undefined. So if there are no prop decorators, we can return an empty array. There were no inputs. Otherwise, we can return prop decorators filtered to the ones where. Oh, filter. Where. Oh, true. Oh. Decorators was what? An object? I need to see this thing again. I should have left it printing over here so I could see it in the console. So let's just log it here. So again, we go dot value, prop decorators dot value, and then that's going to be an object. So we'll need to use like for own from Microdash, which is my little recreation of Lodash. Or no, we can just use filter from it directly then. And that will allow us to iterate over the object the same way we would normally iterate over a array. So that's the decorator, and then and then this is like nested deep in there. So then we have to get the array inside that. So actually this is going to be more like a flatten. Can that take an object? No. Let's just do a map then. That'll get us to an array, and we can start there. So let's map them to decorator dot the value. Okay, the value has an input, has just array. So this is the decorators on a particular property. And let's map that to, I don't know, decorators dot this is an array of something dot filter. Now we have a single decorator, and we can filter to how do we get the string out of this? So like if like the property name, if we don't put a string here, then the property name is what we need. We're done, as long as we can tell that it is an input. But if there's a different name we supply just for the binding, what does that give us? How do we distinguish between the two? So my, which was the one that oh, wait a minute. Triggers, ng changes. Oh, see, when there's an error in Karma, it doesn't rebuild. And it doesn't tell you over here. You just have to go back to your console and realize that's what happened. Okay, here. So there, now we have in input 2, is this string's binding name showing up somewhere? Args, in the args. Okay. Okay, so if we find, so we have to filter by all of the decorators that have a type dot name of prop, no, ng metadata name. Set a breakpoint so we can actually run some commands on here. So if we do something like prop decorators dot value, and let's get which one was it? Excuse me. Input 2. Input 2 dot, let's see what we've got so far. And then the 0th thing, because that's an array. Now we can get the args, and that's great. We're going to want that. And then, well, we have a type. And what can we get from there? Type dot. Name? No. Type dot. type dot prototype. Oh my gosh. Type dot prototype dot ng metadata name. We have to find the ones where that thing. This feels like an enormous hack. I'm nervous. Where that thing is the string input. Oh, I wonder if we can compare it. I wonder if like this prototype is the actual, like, if we import input, if that will be triple equal to each other, and then that would be, or like instance of, if we could say that, if the type is instance of input, I would feel much better about that. Let's try that. Okay. So for each decorator, we want to filter where the decorator dot type is an instance of input. Maybe. That's the decorator, that's the type. Yeah. We're not using this yet, but we will. We got to import this from microdash filtered decorators. I'm going to filtered. All right. Arrays of length 0. Yeah, that's not terribly surprising. Let's stop in here and see. Decorator.type. So decorator.type instance of input is just false. Well, we don't even know what input. Prop decorator factory. Prop. Interesting. So the source maps, we've got some source maps going on here. Let's turn those off and see exactly what source maps are broken. No. What? Main.js? What do you mean? How can it not know the actual JavaScript? I don't think I've seen that before. Okay, well, decorator dot type dot prototype dot ng metadata name. Gosh, just cringe. So we want to filter where this equals input. Okay, so we've got the two inputs, made it through the filter, and then the view child did not. Exactly what we wanted there. So then we filter it, and then, okay, we map. Right, we filter these out, and then we want to map those to be decorator. Where was args? So the decorator, yeah, has args directly on it, next to type. Decorator dot args 0 or property, the property name. That's going to be a string. And then we can flatten that. That's a mess. Ooh. Decorator.args if they are there. Okay, no problem. And we've got the binding name and my input. I don't feel great about the implementation, but I do feel pretty happy about the result. Great. Cool. So now we want to return this guy. That's the list of inputs, and yeah, the string is exactly what we needed. Or we might come back to this. We might return something other than just strings later, but for now. Okay, we got our selector, we got our inputs. So now let's make our dynamic wrapper component. So instead of logging it, we will say that is the selector, and those are the inputs. And then here we've got the selector covered, and we need, what if it's not a, what's it called? Tag? There's attribute selectors, and I don't know. I will know what I mean. Because the component could have an attribute selector or some super complex selector that's not just the name of the tag. And then we're going to have to figure out what to do. But for this simple case, here, let's do inputs.map to the string name equals name, and then join that with whatever, a space. That's fine. Just any white space is okay. And I think that's it. I think that's the dynamic component. And so first of all, we can test that the selector is working by putting something here in the template, inner component, and see if that shows up in the DOM when we run our test. If it does, that means our wrapper component is getting compiled and is able... Oh! Hold on. Not yet. there we go, is getting compiled and is able to get this into the test. Oh, look at that. That's a thing of beauty. Don't look at the code. That's not beautiful. But that right there, that's that on the screen right there. This right here, that's beautiful. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. Now, what about the inputs? How do we get the inputs to actually be passed along? Here I want to say, if I call update inputs here, no, let's get where to go. Here. Yeah, we certainly can't be. Okay, so now we have to do this a different way. So the component instance is a let's get rid of this. We're not using this anymore and find all the problems that creates for us. Right, so this is now, let's make an interface. Here. For the dynamic wrapper component, we want to be able to just, okay, so let me write some code up here so you can see what I'm thinking about. We want to do something like object.assign. This is the wrapper component, the dynamic wrapper. And we want it to have the same public variables. Yeah, the same property names as the inner component that we're actually testing, because we used the same name down here, right? The name in the inner component, we're going to use the same name for the, well, actually this is where we'll have to go back and tweak it, but for now, the name of the input, we want to match the name of the property on the dynamic wrapper component. So we're sort of declaring, right, we're sort of declaring that this matches. Okay, so if we pass in a t, we're going to pretend that the dynamic wrapper component conforms to the same interface, but that's not helpful, right, because of this case. So in this case, we want the name on the dynamic, the outer component, to be binding name. Let's come back to that decision. Let's pretend they're always the same for now and come back to that. So for now, this makes sense, for the simple case at least. And we're going to just pretend as type t. And then when we call update inputs, that's when it's going to, that's when we're going to make it match. So here, now because this guy has the same type as this, that should be legal. The component instance we're going to pretend is the same as the sort of outer one is the same, follows the same interface as the inner one. Yeah. Okay, so now that works. We're going to create, oh, we need to get or keep a hold of this somehow so that we can pass it here to the create component function. How do we do that? Because if we try to assign it, ooh, aren't we going to run into that problem again? Where it's not going to let us. Okay, we have to switch to a regular old private variable, then it should work. Okay. That's left over from the old way. This should be update inputs, but options dot inputs. So I'm going to just copy paste this for now, and maybe we can come back later and improve that. So right, and then now we can do so we've got the component type. Oh, what's your deal? This value is never read. Oh, okay. So wrapper component type is the dynamic wrapper. And then here we want to create one of these when we call it. All right. Whew. Oh, right. We don't need a selector of the outer wrapper. We're using the selector there. Okay, that was a brain fart for a minute, and while I was working on that. Okay. Oh. All right. I'm digging that. I am digging that. So we called update inputs, and it actually called ng on changes. And we'd do my input dot current value to be new value. Oh, that makes me happy. And ng on changes can just be the spy. This is stuff I was messing with before. Oh, no, it can't. Oh, that surprises me. Okay, fine. I can certainly leave it like that. Okay. For some reason, Angular doesn't pick it up as a lifecycle hook unless you declare it like this or something, I guess. That's fine. We don't need this template. That was just for some troubleshooting. Oh, we do need a template, but it doesn't have to have any actual content. We don't need the binding name for this test, but we should write some more tests. And we're going to have to do some more tweaks to get this actually working correctly. So before I go too far, let me try and so we want init accepts component input. That's good. Triggers ng on changes, because that's also a time where this needs to happen. That's new in this is the exciting new development. The whole reason we're doing this is to be able to what's this test component? Oh, okay, let's make our change detecting component one that we can reuse. Oh, that's fine. Test component is real simple and then has something in its template. Change detecting component, we're going to need to reset this SPI every time and a before each. That's okay. I'm okay with that. This we're going to come back to. Let's rename this to ng on changes SPI, and then in a before each, we will set ng on changes SPI to be a new one of these, because we're going to have to recreate that for each test. SPIs only last, they're gone after one test, after every test. So this is a jasmine.spy. Okay, so we should have a passing test suite here, or I mean, yeah, that one function test. That's good. And then let's see what is passing for the whole component. Ooh, not much. Okay, so I'm gonna, like I had said, I'm going to just write a couple notes of some tests, like this one. And then oh wait, this delegates. Oh no, it doesn't delegate here. So yeah. Okay, and then here let's add some more tests here, like it oops, that's not the right spot. Here. It can update renamed inputs. I don't know what to call those, where you set the string inside that input decorator. And is there anything else, or is that really? Oh, something like it. No, maybe that's pretty good actually. Maybe that's just not too bad. Maybe as we go, we'll come up with some more tests to write, and we're going to have to think about this and decide what to do with it. But yeah, I am feeling pretty good. Things are working, and so I feel like it's safe to actually delete all that now. And that width height stuff we can do as a separate feature. I've made tests where I really like to have like if I have written a progressive web app that I want to work well on a phone, in my wrapper component that I've made by hand instead of using this cool automatic one that we're doing right now, I've made like a div of a small size to sort of represent a phone screen with a black border around it, and then rendered my actual component inside there. And if I can have this framework take care of that for me also, I mean, that's the whole point of these frameworks, is to start consolidating all the stuff that I've written in multiple of my side projects into these library that can reuse it and do it quickly for the next side project, and you can use it for yours too. Oh gosh, I don't even want to filter down to this. Oh wow. Oh, what's our problem here now? Oh, I just spelled it wrong or whatever. Okay. Oh. Inputs is a better name. So let's do that. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So now let's start turning a bunch of those red tests green. Or try. So we have 9 failures. Let's see. Cleanup does the superclass thing. It cannot read property selector of undefined. Ah, that's in this selector. Aha. Okay, that problem will be easy. We are requiring, okay, so let's add a nice little test here. Ah, this is like adding all these guards. Okay, so let's start making this a little more user-friendly. So let's make a test that, so what we want is to have a useful error message for the user to say, hey, you need to have a selector on the component that you pass into component context next. You have to define a selector. And in fact, we could even make it, you have to define one that is only whatever the valid selectors are for the tag. Like it's not an attribute selector, but like a normal standard. Matching the tag name thing. So that is maybe going to be a test in the constructor. When you construct the thing is when we want it to start throwing an error. So it prints it throws a nice, let's see, I don't know, requires a tag selector on the component. Sure. And so how can we test that most easily, we're going to need to make a new component that doesn't have one here for this error case. And this will be the no selector component. Oops. And so if we try and do, so we'll expect a new test. We'll expect when we try to do new test, what? Component context next of no selector component to throw an error. And what message should we want this thing to have? I don't know. Component must have a selector. And what do you call it? Angular attribute selector. And what's the other kind? An attribute directive. No components. Attribute can I put 2 words here? Component? What does it do? Ooh, that gave me even more. Was that like an or? Where do I find using a component selector as an attribute? I'm trying to create, yup, that's fine. I know you can do that. TSLint, the selector of component should be used as element. We could copy that sort of same language from TSLint. Okay. Let's see if that's the most recent language. This is from 2018. That should be stable by then. Component must have a selector that matches an element. Matches a tag name. I'm just going to write it. I went back and forth trying to find it, and then I didn't like what I found in the end. Okay, this should fail because we get an error by a different name. And then we can make it all nice to fail because it gets an error by the correct. So we expected this message, but instead we got this message. Perfect. So first let's do this. Oh, wait. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Let's go one step at a time. So this is the selector, and then we can assert the selector exists, and if not, we can do this message. So we're at 10 failures. This should bring us down to 9. Oh! Cannot read property selector of undefined. Oh, right. That was... There we go. Now we should be down to 9. Okay, nice. And then... Ha! Thanks, Kira. Thanks for following me. I think we can do a little. We can make this test better. So there's no selector. Let's also hit the case where it like is an attribute selector. I want to do three different cases. I want to do a no selector, an attribute selector, and one with like this crazy complex selector. Like I'll go find a wild one from maybe the Angular. And what are those called? Oh, what are those called? For like ng model for the different inputs. View, no. Oh shoot, I'm rusty on all my template-driven form fanciness. Anyway, I know where I can go find some crazy selectors to use, and they would be also illegal. They need to match a tag name. So if we have a selector which looks like looks like you know, my attribute or whatever, that is going to give us now a failing test again, back up to 10, and we're going to have to go write the code to detect. In fact, I assume we're going to end up with a regex that will capture both the attribute director and the crazy director. So selector, you know, tag name with class and adder equals value, right? And then what does a regex look like for an actual legitimate, just straight up tag name? I think it's just alphanumeric and dashes in the middle, or like, right? Like what are valid HTML valid tag names? Ooh, I bet you we can just find a regex for it. How to validate regex with regular expression. Java, regular expression example. Unit testing? Can I get one that's a little more succinct? One of these ought to be it. Now, I want someone who's capturing the rules of like the HTML spec for tag names. I want to verify the code that enters as HTML code and end with, oh, come on, my search is wrong. Valid tag name. That's just alphanumeric. That's okay. Let's stop trying to find the regex. I can build the regex if you can just tell me what's valid. What are valid HTML5 custom tags? Yes, no, he doesn't know. Where's the answer? There are no valid custom HTML5 tags. Okay. They can start with ASCII. Oh, doesn't it seem like this should be a simple question? I'm just going to go with alphanumeric with dashes pretty soon. Or not even numeric? I don't even know if it can be numeric. That's why I want to look this thing up. Verify whether a string is a valid. Yeah, that's what I want. Oh, that's tricky. That's yeah. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Oh no, that's testing. Mmm. That's testing if it's a known element, not if it's a valid string. Okay, I might come back to that. We could play with that. Can we do like if we do document.create element and give it something we know is an invalid tag name? What does it do? It throws an exception. Tag name is not a valid name. And I'd rather not. I mean, we could throw the run that, catch the exception, and if that if it throws this, we convert it to our own special um, message. Plan B. Well, I tell you what, let's do red green refactor. Let's turn it green and then decide if we want to refactor. So so we know it exists. Now let's see. What does this do if there if there is if we don't pass it anything, like if we pass it undefined? Whoa, it creates a tag where the name is the string undefined. Okay, so we have to do this still. And then we can do try document.create element with the selector catch. And if we get an exception, we're going to throw a different one instead with our this thing. Oh. Well, red-green refactor. We'll come back and clean this up if that turns it from 10 failures to 9. Sure enough. I wonder if I have tools to block this person who just spammed ban. Haha. I'm gaining Twitch powers. Someone just spammed the chat and now they're banned. I thought there was supposed to be some like auto moderator for messages in Twitch, but maybe I have to look into those settings or else that person knows how to get around them. You'd think they'd target a channel that has a couple of viewers. Kira or anyone else who might actually be here. It says I have one viewer, but it never goes down to 0. So once someone joins, I can't tell if they leave or if there's actually still one person watching. So if there's anyone here, I do appreciate your presence. Thank you. Feel free to chat with me. Right, so refactor. The first ideal refactor would be to actually find a regex. I don't like this try catch thing as normal, like don't use exceptions as normal control flow if you can help it. Valid. Oh my gosh, I have way too many tabs open, and I don't think I need any of them anymore. Oops, we looked at that one already. Did we look at this one yet? XML. Whoa! A tag consists of something and then name, attribute. Ooh, that's more complicated than I realized. Okay. HTML documents must fit HTML specification. Yeah, obviously. XML, yup, obviously. Oh, come on. What characters are allowed in? The real restriction? In form control names, no, I want tag names. Attributes, no. Oh, will this MDN thing give me a description? No. Oh, why is this so hard? What are not allowed in tags? Sure. On the sidebar of what? Welcome back. What's close? What is this? Where am I? Meta.stack exchange. Oh, tags of tags in Stack Overflow. Ooh, HTML syntax. Elements. Start tags. Tag name. That can only use the characters in the range 0 to 9, A to Z, and A to Z. What? So the actual official HTML, the HTML tags don't even have dashes in them. But you can create your own elements, obviously, that have dashes and such, because we do it all the time in Angular. So we can do like document.create element, a dash like that. So this syntax is, again, not giving me what I want. Unbelievable. All right, well, I'm sick of looking. I'm going to just leave this hack for now. And I just want to avoid repeating this then. So I'm going to say assert is valid tag name, or is valid selector. And, whoa. We will say if it's falsy, then no. Else we're going to do this. Turn true. Otherwise, return false. And then I don't need to repeat stuff anymore. Okay. So that should get us the refactor part of red-green refactor. We hopefully still have 9 failures. Lovely. Great. What's next? Let's turn, right, and all of that was setting up a nice error message for here, and now we sort of were putting ourselves in the shoes of a user who made the same mistake that I had. Now there's a nice error message saying, hey, you have to have a selector for that component, and we can go fix it. So the selector is stest. Down to 2 failures. Oh, and they're both, okay, we fixed all of our existing tests. That is fantastic. And we can go start, slowly getting all of the tests I have commented out or all the placeholders filled in to then, yeah, I think we're just on that little trudge now, and then I think we should be ready to go actually use this. So way at the beginning of the stream, I was talking about the whole goal here is to move a tests that I was writing before that were had all this set up in boilerplate to instead look much simpler, like this. And I think once we fix all these tests, we'll be in a place to go actually do that, and then it will be mission accomplished. Dog M, yeah, thanks. Yeah. Um, the whole goal here, I don't know when you joined, but yeah, this is the whole goal. I've got this open source library called ngDev that I use all the time for all of my own little side projects. Um, and I've got these helpers that I love. They really simplify a lot setting up a test for like these big complex components that I'm testing in these side projects. Like I'll bootstrap a whole like progressive web app basically, and click on it and see that it does the right things. And I love it for that. But then yesterday I was streaming and I was writing tests like this when really the only code I cared about was like a couple of lines here and there in this one. I was like, okay, my test helper is not being very helpful. It is time to go revisit how I set this whole thing up and make it easier to use for these simple cases. So that's why, the title of this stream is making, or some part of something was making simple tests simple, right? Whew, awesome. Right, so we're going to start uncommenting. No, let's find one of those tests that's red and turn it green. So it can update renamed inputs. Can update. I guess we have to write it and then turn it green. Oh, yes, and this is a whole feature we don't have yet. I forgot about this. This is why I write notes while I'm coding, so that later my tests are going to say, hey, buddy, remember this? Remember this whole feature you forgot? Good thing I made the reminder. I'm going to take a quick bio break. I'll be back in just a couple of minutes, and we can carry on making this thing better. I'll leave the code up so you can stare at things. Where's the most interesting stuff to stare at if you're interested? I think it's this dynamic wrapper guy. That's the secret sauce of this whole thing. All right, be right back. Okay, thanks for hanging in. Um, right, and let me just go over again before we dive back in a little more, even a little more detail, the goal here, um, because we're a couple hours in. It's been a couple hours since I explained this before. Um, so the whole idea, I think it was just last night I was streaming and writing this super long test where all I really wanted um, was, like this line and a couple lines here. But the problem is um, the Angular testing framework um, doesn't make it very simple to test your component and have all of the lifecycle hooks be called, particularly ng on changes. Because if you just do this, like the normal way to do this would be like testbed dot, oh no, it's going to be here. If you just do testbed dot create component and you pass in the actual component you're trying to test, ng on changes will not be called. Because I read up all about this just yesterday. So even this is pretty up to date information as far as I can tell. It had open issues in GitHub, even with comments from the Angular core team. It's because that ng on changes, that's hooked up to the template bindings themselves. So if you are pulling the strings and you're setting the value directly on the component, instead of having a template set the value on the component, ng on changes isn't going to happen. And so the workaround or the trick to get it to start working correctly in your test is you make a wrapper component and then you set the properties, you bind it to the one you actually want to test in that wrapper component's template, and then everything is hooked up right. And so if you look at this test, like we've got this wrapper component with a template that has the directive here, and then here's my directive, and this is the thing I actually want to test. All of this was boilerplate. And then I had to put in my declaration both of these things to get it to all bootstrap correctly. And it was just, too much for, all I want, this was my goal, all I want is to say, give me a context for this thing and call in ng on changes. Figure it out. So that's what we're doing. We are slowly but surely figuring it out so that future tests don't have to. All right, so this failing test here. So we made this dynamic component that finds the selector of the component you're trying to test. It puts that in its template. Finds all the inputs of the component you're trying to test. It puts them in its template. And then we've got this get update inputs then, which pulls the strings and calls this .tick is going to then trigger all the change detection, and then change detection will get the Angular framework going, and it's going to call ng on changes with all the right parameters and be a totally legit lifecycle hook call. Because another workaround people mentioned in like Stack Overflow is, oh, well, just call ng on changes yourself directly, and that's not how I like to roll. I don't want to pretend that I know all the right order and arguments that the framework is going to call all of my hooks in. Like that's too much. That's too prone to error. I want to trigger the framework to do it all for me, and then I know that it's doing it, exactly the way that it will in the actual production code. So the issue now, let's write a failing test, is that this name might be, when we have a case here, I'll start writing it, and that will help demonstrate what I'm trying to say. So let's do a new component just for this test. It's going to have a selector. We'll fill that in a second, and it's going to have a template because components are just required to have that. So there's all of our boilerplate. Right, so this is going to be our renamed input component, and it's going to have an input, but where we give it a binding name that is different than the property name, and we'll say that's going to pass in a string. And there's a lint rule against that, but yet it is a legal thing to do in Angular. So this is going to be the s renamed input, and here we want to test this guy, and we want to test, like, if we pass in first of all, what name do we want to use here, and then custom value, and then we're going to and here let's just render it. And then we're going to expect ctx dot fixture native element dot text content text, yeah, something like this, to contain the custom value we pass in. So that's going to prove that our dynamic wrapper can actually navigate one of these renamed inputs. The question is, which name do we want to put here? And I feel like we're going to need it to be this name, because otherwise TypeScript is not aware of this thing. We can't make a type that requires binding name to show up here, but we should probably already have property name there. So let's stick with that. So when we stick in the property name of custom value, we're going to need to have this thing actually bind to binding name on this side. So this should fail right now. Let's run just this test. Just this test. Yeah, and it's blank right now. It didn't get the custom value routed in there properly. So that means that down here where we get the inputs, we can't just return a string array. We're going to have to return like some sort of array of objects that has the binding name and the property name both. Yeah, let's do that. So we're going to return, an array that has an object in it with binding name, which is a string, and property name, which is a string. And then here, what we have so far is the binding name, and then we're also going to want the property name. And let's shorten that. We don't need the where'd it go? Binding and property. Good. So then here in our dynamic component, the inputs are now, those things. So this is going to be the binding and the property, and so this binding is going to be the property, right? And if we're lucky, that turns the test green. Ha! Love it. And so now we should still have just 9. Oh, just one failure. Ha! I'm loving it. Okay. it can. Oh, and this is a test for update inputs, so I better call that. I kind of like the way I wrote the test here. Let's just move this test up to the constructor. Oh no, init. Init is where it is. Yeah. And then init also needs to trigger on changes. So that's going to be, because yeah, right, we passed in the binding name through this, and this is what gets into init. All right. So triggers on changes during init equals new change detecting component. I already made one of these. Oh, equals new, sorry, component context next of this guy, and then ctx.run. We're going to expect. Oh, let's find the other one. Ng changes. We have another test we can copy to get all of this. And we're going to have to pass a value. Something I learned yesterday, and I had no idea, was that if you don't actually bind any values to the component, change detection won't run, even in production. You have to actually supply. I don't know if it could be undefined, like if it has to just be in the template, if that's enough. Let's experiment now, because if we don't supply this, the values are going to be undefined, but yet they're still going to show up in the template. Let's see if change detection runs. We don't need to test the value in that case. We just need to show that. So we have a SPI. So this guy has is just set up so that in ng changes it calls this SPI that we have access to in the test. So if it initializes this and this is called, then we should see that the SPI was also called one time. Okay, so just being, that's good enough. That's the test. Bada bing. Cool. That's awesome. That's awesome. That makes me happy. All right, so now I've got all these other tests that are left over from this. So in this before and after, the before is using component context, and we've been working on component context next, which is the next evolution in Angular test helpers from me. And so I copied this and pasted it here, thinking I would deprecate this guy and encourage users to switch over to this one, and then I can remove this in a breaking change in some later version of the library. And so I also copied the tests for this component over here and commented out a bunch of ones I didn't want to deal with yet. So let's start dealing with them. So fixture is provided, that's true. However, this is a breaking change. The component instance is no longer the actual test component. Now the component instance of the fixture is the wrapper, and that's just a necessary evil to accomplish the whole Angular framework calling change detection for us thing. Or sorry, calling ng on changes specifically for us. We still have to trigger change detection. So that's interesting. I should adjust the documentation for this. It doesn't. Component fixture for a synthetic wrapper around your component. And so I'll switch this to unknown to discourage users from, trying to interact with it directly, thinking it's their actual component. So let's just expect this to be an instance of component fixture. And that's all we're going to guarantee in this new version of the test helper. Oh, we have... No. Component context spec. Oh, I did this in the wrong file. Undo, undo, undo. Go back to what you were in master. Go away. All right. Okay. That's what I want here. And let's fix this linting. Whoops. Inspection. What's the problem here? Is not declared in any Angular module. Well, it doesn't need to be. What is this? Oh, this is coming just from WebStorm itself? Okay, well, stop trying to be so smart, WebStorm, because you're wrong. If you were right, I would like it, but if you're giving me false positives, I don't want to hear it. Okay, tslint, we can suppress that. Okay, got rid of all the red underlines. Okay, there we go. Okay, so then now we have 12 specs and they all pass. Fantastic. Let's find another test to get working again. It creates a component of the type specified in the constructor. Right. This, we just don't have this anymore. This is just, you don't have access, direct access to the component instance anymore. And actually, is that a problem? Should we create a way to gain access to it? I feel like, though I don't personally like to use that style, I like to only interact with, in my applications, I like to only interact with the application like a user would, which does not include inspecting JavaScript variables on component instances. Instead, I look at the DOM and look at what text is on the DOM, which classes are in the DOM, and that sort of thing. But other people probably do like that, and I have found myself doing it when I'm writing library tests. So let's leave a to-do here. Make a way to get the component instance. And actually, come to think of it, that's going to give us this get component. That's going to simplify this whole part for us, right? Oh yeah, so that's going to be like ctx dot. Do I want to make, well, whatever, it'd be something like get component instance. We won't even have to pass this in. That's even better than I was planning. And this is the test component. Awesome. Love it. Okay, so we are going to, where was I? We are going to come back to that. Run gets change detection working inside the fixture, so this should be so what would be it? So in the old component context, we were allowing, this is going to be relevant again when we can get a hold of the component instance again. I mean, run change detection, it's going to be easy to adapt this once we get there. So let's come back to that one too. Wow. Oh, this is the same thing. Wow, these are all using a mechanism that we're not going to really have access to. Okay, I guess we're going to come back to it right now. Come back to it. So we need Something like this, get component instance. Fine. Get component instance, which is going to return a component type object. And I'm going to write a failing test for it. I'm going to write a failing test for it and then come back. Do a little red-green refactor. Test-driven development. Describe get component instance. It returns the component, the instantiated component. So we can just use our standard component context next. We can use our standard test component that we have up above that a lot of these use. We can pass in, good. We can pass in some value like like the name is instantiated name. And then we will expect ctx.get component instance dot name to be instantiated name. And this should be a good check that not only does it return a test component, but it even is the one that we set the correct name on. That makes me feel pretty good about the test. So this should fail because we're returning undefined right now, and we have to make it pass. How do we get a hold of this component instance? That's going to be this dot fixture dot debug element dot query by directive this dot now we do need the component type, so we have to save this. Okay. When we make a call before super, it restricts the kinds of things we can do here. So the private component type, which is a type of the component type, this dot component type equals component type. Let's import this guy. And now this is returning what? This is returning a debug element, which has on it, I think, a component instance. So let's see if that was it. Let's see how well I remembered how to do that without looking up any documentation. Hey, I remembered. Red, green, and no refactor necessary. I think that looks fine. Okay, now we can go back and revisit all of these. And so to create a component, it creates a component of the right type. Now we can use get component instance, and now that should be of the right type. And so we go from 13, we should now have 14 passing specs. Lovely. And we can now re-enable this test, where if we get the component instance and set the name directly ourselves. Oh, this is interesting. I wonder if we should even expect this to work. If we set this ourselves and call tick, right, because we didn't, if we had on push change detection, we might expect this to still fail because change detection wouldn't work its way down to this component. But since we didn't, this is just very simple. I think we will now have 15 passing specs. Yeah, great, because tick ends up delegating to, calls this in between. Right, let's just turn this red and make sure that's still a valid test. So if we go to run change detection, if we didn't override this, the whole point of this test is to make sure that this is working right. And so we should see this fail if it's still actually providing an appropriate test for this production code. Ah, good. Good. And so that means it's actually a meaningful test that's proving that this production code is working. And finally, we'll do a similar thing. Ooh. Let's try replacing this. This might give us a different problem, but maybe we'll get lucky. I'm kind of thinking this is going to fail if we've already destroyed the fixture, but maybe not. We'll see. So if we have 16 passing specs, we'll know everything is hunky-dory. Oh, okay, great. So it does still coincidentally work after the fixture has been destroyed, but detect changes has been unhooked. And so that's how we're testing that it's actually destroyed. Right, so again, if we do our similar, it's supposed to be testing this code. And so if that code is not there, we should see it fail. Perfect. Wow, that's ugly. I had to do some real hacking in here. I'm not proud of the hacking that was required, but I'm happy with the end result. Now, there is still some work to go, but it's a different kind of work. I feel like this is now fully functional. We've got all the tests passing. Right, so let's make a commit for that. And let's go ahead and use it here and get the joy out of changing this before to after. I'm not going to be ready to release this yet. So I should do this. Yeah, I'm off in a separate branch already, because I want to update the documentation and that sort of thing. But that's a great milestone. We're going to commit. Oh, that was turning off that inspection. That's fine. Oh, we did test that already. So review the commit. Always good to review all of your code before you actually commit it, because you're going to find stuff like this that's already done. Oh, and this, which was just me playing around with some things. Oh, you know what? Yeah, even more important to review, because maybe you'll see something you were playing around with and forgot to test. We have this code here filtering by only the decorators that are inputs. And I had this here when I was figuring out how to filter like that. And so I wonder if we can write ourselves a failing test for a case where we forget this filter. Because right now I suspect everything is going to pass. Yeah. So we need to write a failing test for that. Ooh. This is why we review our commits. Excuse me, review our diffs before we commit. So this is going to be still part of the constructor. It can handle tricky components. It can handle components that use view child in tricky ways. I think that's kind of what we're going to have to end up with here. And so is going to maybe be, yeah, similar to this. I don't know if it's going to end up throwing an error or what, but let's see if we can write some code that ends up breaking things for us. I think, so we're going to have the tricky view child component. It is going to need a selector because that's just boilerplate for us. S tricky view child. What's your deal? Oh, selector, muscle memory selection. Template can be blank. And let's just do this and see what happens. If we have if we just have a view child. Tricky, which is a tricky child, which is an element ref. All right, I think that might fail, but for the wrong reason right now. Oh no, that doesn't care about that. Okay, so now I'm wondering if we make a input called tricky, is that going to get us into trouble? If we have a view child and an input with the same name. Tricky, which is, I don't know, a string. Can handle components that use view child. I just want to make sure it's actually running. Yeah, right there. Okay. I want to see what the template looks like in this case. Let's extract this out. I feel like that's going to be a weird looking template that I'm kind of surprised works. So let's just log that. And let's just run this one test so we can easily see where the log printed. Yeah, it bound twice. I'm kind of surprised Angular is okay with that. You can bind to the same component twice? I was expecting Angular to balk at that and say, oh, you have an error in your template. But now, what's it going to do if we try to pass a value in for tricky? Yeah, maybe that's how we can make this fail. So let's oh, wait a minute. Oh. Maybe it will. Maybe we have to call run. Let's see if that throws an error. Nope. Okay, so now let's see what happens if we pass in a value for it. So we want to pass in a value in for I don't know. I guess tricky. And we're going to expect get component instance dot tricky to be the value. Ah, there we go. And now there's a failing test that I'm hoping this will then turn green. Yes. Okay, awesome. So that shows that it's actually filtering. It's not going to try to overwrite what should be an input with a later value, a tricky value that happens to have the same name but is a view child or content child or any of the other decorators that you might put on a property. Nice. Okay, so we were reviewing the diff. Haha. Let's see if there's any more missing tests. There's our new one we just wrote. That's a breaking change from the old non-next version, the old version of component context. What is this? We're checking. Oh, right. This was the whole point, that we're triggering the lifecycle hooks. Yep. Right. Renamed inputs. That was this one, like our tricky case, but where the renaming is on the input itself. Wow, we did a lot of work tonight. I'm gonna really love this. Oh, does this just work? I don't need to comment it out if it's just gonna still pass. Inputs, plural. Okay, that means I'm gonna have to change it, and I'm gonna have to change it in the documentation. I will leave it commented out. Okay, and that was the last of this file, and then here's the separate feature for that. Here's the actual production code. We're gonna have to update the documentation. That's still there. I'm gonna leave a note for on the future change. Test the typing here. Since it was significant to me to make sure that this was the correct type for my users, I should have a test for that, and that'll be something I deal with later. I know how to do that. I don't have to do that tonight. So much progress tonight. I'm loving this. Create a dynamic wrapper. Right, that's the whole main big change. And then here's all of our hacky create the dynamic component code. Wow, that took a lot of code. I'll clean this up a little bit another day. Oh, I don't need this console log anymore. I'll clean that up right now. Yeah, don't look at this. Close your eyes. Don't look at the way I reached into the Angular internal private API stuff. We did that to do. Oh, that's great. And we even wrote tests for it. With this. And I will come back and do this to do some other time, because this is just out of hand. Okay, awesome. Oh, this is something I was sketching out one time and did not end up doing. And that's something I did. We can go ahead and include that. That's a out of date to do item. Awesome. Awesome. Oh, so cool. Functional, let's see, component context next is working. And what else can I say about it? It's working and tested. That's good enough. And I don't need GitHub Actions to run. Because now, for the fun of the evening is to go actually use it in this test and ones like it to actually achieve the goal. So for that, I'm going to have to build this. So this test comes from, so we were just working in ngDev. This is the library of mine where there are test helpers and other things that you will use when you're developing Angular applications, but it's not stuff that gets deployed. So the test helpers don't get deployed with your app. So this is dev only. And last stream we were working on something in ngCore in this directive superclass. And the tests in here are the ones that looked awful and just, I don't know, troubled my soul to write like this. And so here is where we can go. Right, so we're going to import the component context next from ngDev into here. Oh, which means we're going to have to export it from the library if we're going to want to be able to import it here. So we have to do that little trick. Okay, that's no problem. So that's easy enough. That means to export it. Wait, failing test first. I have test. So this is a monorepo with several open source libraries of mine in it. And this has the test for things that are exported from each of them. So it not only has component context, but it also has component context next, which means we're going to need to import it from here. And it's going to complain about that because we're not exporting it yet, because we should be exporting it from here. And do we need this? That's interesting. Why did I export that? I exported that because I used it in subclass in other applications. Right, I wanted to use, yep. I remember using it, so let's keep it. Component context init, next init. And let's just go component context. Oh! Next init. Okay, so now we're exporting it. We can't import it here because, well, anyway, we'll just follow the pattern from before. I'm sure I thought through that before, and I am too excited to go achieve the goal to rethink through it now. Right, so now if we rebuild ngDev, it should be exported into the compiled library, and that's what this is meant to test. So that's done, and if we just sort of cause WebStorm to refresh things, that should turn green, or we could just run our integration test. Oh shoot, I'm sorry, that's not the test, that's the actual app. Test server. Sorry. Oh, it has to do that again? I thought it would have remembered. Oh, just ngDev, because, right. Okay. So now this should be the integration tests. And there they are. And we should see component context next. Lovely. Okay. That brings us to the grand finale, the directive superclass spec. Now, in here, we should be able to make this a lot shorter. So this is now going to be a, I'm going to pull this up. I should be able to use this as reference. A component. I do need a selector, but it has to be an attribute selector. So this is a test component. And that was unnecessary. Right, it's going to have a template. And then this is a shadowed name. I need a better name for this. What are we testing? Emits even if no inputs are provided to the component. So this is the blank inputs component. Sure. The blank inputs component. Oh gosh, this was a terrible one to start with. Because we can't actually use our synthetic wrapper for this one. Oh shoot. Okay, that's okay. That's okay. Put this back. We have plenty of others that are just as ugly where we can use it. This was just one really special case. Remember earlier in the stream, if you were here, I said that something I discovered yesterday was that if you don't supply any values in the template, like if you don't bind to anything, then Angular, even in production, will never call ng on changes. And I was testing some code in that special case here, and our wrapper does bind to it. That's the point of the wrapper, and so we can't use our new wrapper to test that. But never fear, we have plenty of other. Oh my, look at all this. This is more than a full page on this one test on my my editor here. Let's see what we can get this down to. This one we should be able to convert. So this is a component. It does have a selector, but it's S test. It has a template, which is blank. This one actually does implement on changes. That was a copy-paste mistake down here. I can at least remove that. Unrelated to our coolness, but still a simplification. So test. Sure. A component is a directive, so we can actually leave that name, and that's fine. We don't need this anymore. We don't need this anymore. This is the component context next, and we pass it our test directive. And this becomes .get component instance. And then, okay, and let's fire this up. Directive superclass. Oh no, ng core tests. Ng core tests. So we're going to expect a passing test suite, and then we can go comment out the production code that this is testing and make sure that it's actually not only passing but also, testing something. Lovely. And then to truly show that it's working right, it emits only if ng changes, only if ng on changes is called. So we can simulate ng on changes not being called by doing this. And that then, if this fails, now we will know that it's actually testing the thing that it is meant to. Where's our test? Where's our test? Emits immediately. Emits. Uh-oh. Oh, sorry, that's not what it was testing. Oh. It emits immediately only if ng. I have to remember what I was doing yesterday. That's a tall order. That is from here. I think that's the production code that was meant to test. Hey, okay. Whew. Awesome. So let's already just see what our diff is here. Of this one. So we dropped 63 minus 51 is 12 lines from this test of boilerplate meaninglessness that just got in the way of anyone trying to actually read this and understand what's going on. That's a win. That's a win. Let's see if there's some more. Oh, look, there is. It emits undefined for unspecified inputs. That must be the one that we found was actually still broken, that we couldn't convert. Oh no, that's this one, even if no inputs are provided. What's the difference? Emits undefined for unspecified inputs. Emits even if no inputs are provided to the component. So to make these two tests seem identical to me right now, I think I need to make them better before I can make the test itself actually better before I can then remove all the boilerplate and feel okay about that. So let's split this and compare the two side by side. So here's the top test and here's the bottom test, and that's even better. Let's take the content of this and compare that with the clipboard. Yeah, these are identical tests. Well, it's a Boolean instead of a string. But yeah. Okay, so that was dumb. So this one below is the one we can't convert. This one we can convert if we make it more, and I'm gonna move this down here. If we make it actually its own, a test on its own in its own right. So an unspecified input means, let's do so this is going to be the specified, and this is going to be the unspecified. And we're going to, when we do this thing, we're only going to provide an input for the specified one. Oh, this is it. Right, we can remove all our boilerplate. We can do component context next for the test directive. We can do specified is a value, and then we can do ctx2.get component instance dot emitted value. So we get the unspecified, and we should see that it does emit undefined for the unspecified input, the one that we did not put here. And so it should fire unspecified equals initial value. And so if it doesn't emit, then this is going to end up being, oh, I had the initial value there. Okay, I did not. Okay, I already thought through that part at least. So if this does not emit, then this won't be overwritten. And so the idea here is to show that it's undefined, meaning it got here and emitted undefined for this value. Right. Okay. Haha! Good thing I made that error message so easy to understand. Component must have a selector name that matches a tag name. Have a selector that matches a tag name. So we can't be doing this. We have to do s test. There we go. Golden. Do we have any more of these ugly things that we can remove the boilerplate from? Right, it was these. That's nice and succinct. That's the one we can't do yet. I'll come back to that some other time. And that's nice and succinct. What are you complaining about? Oh, shoot, this needs to be a component. What? How did that even pass? Oh! Huh. That's true. It could actually work with a directive as long as it has a selector that matches a tag name. That's fascinating. Weird use case I just accidentally stumbled upon. I don't think I want to write my tests to use that because I don't actually care that, I maintain that behavior going forward. That's going to be like a undocumented feature that I don't really support. So I will switch that to a component, and it has a template, but we don't need any content in the template. Okay, and we should still be passing. Okay, loving it. Loving it. Good. I'm happy. Today we did so much. We accomplished what I wasn't sure we were even going to be able to, first of all. And that is to make the wrapper, make it so that we didn't have to do our own wrapper every time we write a test for a component. Now this component context just does that for us automatically and gives us the full Angular lifecycle goodness. We have it fully tested. A few more features to go, but I'm really happy. I'm really happy. Thanks for sticking around. So, if you're watching on Twitch, I appreciate the company. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to put in the description below links to all the code we just wrote, links to the open source library, links to my Twitch channel in case you want to see me streaming on Tuesday evenings. Check the schedule. I don't know, you might be watching this in 3 years. You should check the schedule. But if you see this soon, I'm streaming on Tuesday evenings for sure, and other times at random. Eastern time. I'm in the Eastern time zone. And yeah, I hope this has been useful. If you made it this far in the video, I mean, 3.25 hours. This was a marathon, and this is great. This is what I like to do in my free time. And if other people find it interesting or useful, please let me know. Let me know by following me on Twitch, giving me a like on YouTube, leaving comments especially to let me know that this is useful, and then I can continue doing this because I spend, this is my hobby. My day job is a software engineer, and my hobby is, writing more software a lot of the time. So if people like watching me stream it, I'm happy to do that. If you're watching live, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, happy whatever you celebrate, and I will see you next time. Happy coding.